Beneath the scorching southwestern sun, a desperate mother clings to her unconscious daughter on a deserted roadside, forgotten, abandoned and left to die. No one stops, no one cares, until a solitary stranger's truck slows down, offering a fragile chance at hope and survival in a world burning with cruelty and indifference. But what happens next? Who will survive the burning desert silence? Can one act of kindness spark a new beginning? Please subscribe to our channel. We're building a community where kindness is our most cherished and honored word. The desert sun scorched like a curse, with temperatures climbing past 110 degrees Fahrenheit, softening the tar beneath fleeting tires. No shelter, no respite, just sand, stones, and a hot breeze swirling dust along a quiet lane. Stretching from the Hargrove Manor to the main road, far from any town, Lena Carver slumped on the ground, clutching her daughter, Sophie. Her sundress was ripped at the hem, her skin blistered and peeling, a trickle of blood staining her temple. She held tightly to 9-year-old Sophie. Unconscious, her wrist bruised and caked with dirt. Beside them lay a worn satchel and a nearly empty canteen. No ambulance, no phone, no passers-by, only the drone of locusts and a heat that choked the air. Lena whispered, her voice hoarse, barely audible. "Sophie, please wake up." "Don't frighten me," she begged. Sophie didn't stir. Her lips were pale, her small fingers still gripping her mother's skirt, as if clinging to a fading hope. Beyond a steel gate, through the smoked glass of the Hargrove Manor's drawing room, Evelyn Hargrove watched. Once a confidant of the late Victor Hargrove, Lena's husband, she stood in a pristine linen dress, sipping chilled lemonade. Her face devoid of warmth or pity. Her expression was as cool as the ice in her glass. "She has no place here now," a voice remarked from behind. It was Roland Vance, Victor's trusted ally and the Hargrove family's accountant. Outside the locked gate, Lena sat on the curb, clutching Sophie tightly as if fearing she might slip away. She didn't look up, her arms wrapped protectively around, her daughter as locusts buzzed, like a mournful chorus. Her heart ached for the one thing she still had, Sophie. The accusations, the scorn, the grand house behind her, it all meant nothing now. If she could save her daughter, she could withstand anything. Just as hope withered, crushed by cruelty and indifference, a vehicle slowed. The story shifted, not by divine intervention, but because one person chose to act. A weathered blue Chevy pickup pulled over, its engine coughing in the heat. The driver lowered his window, squinting against the glare. He didn't act out of sympathy, but because a pang stirred in his chest, a distant memory. Gideon Holt, 43, was a solitary millionaire who owned vast orchards and held shares in regional farming ventures. After losing his wife and son in a tragic accident, he retreated to a secluded ranch, shunning society. Then he saw her, a weary woman cradling an unconscious child. Her eyes met his, fierce yet guarded, like a cornered animal ready to fight. Gideon stepped out, keeping his distance. He knelt slightly, his voice steady. "Your girl's feverish. I've got water in a truck. Let me help." Lena's gaze faltered. She lacked the strength to refuse, not out of trust, but because she had no other choice. Her hand tightened around Sophie, but she didn't pull away. "I won't come near you," Gideon said. "She's burning up. I have water, a truck, and I know a doctor." He placed a water bottle on the ground a few feet away and stepped back. The gesture startled Lena. No one from the Hargrove estate had shown such care. She looked at Sophie, her lips cracked, her breathing faint. She knew another moment's delay could cost her daughter's life. Tears brimmed in her eyes. She nodded, not with trust, but with resignation. Inside the truck, with its worn seats and faint scent of pine and medicine, Sophie lay across the back seat. Lena held her daughter's head, gently wiping her brow with a damp cloth Gideon provided. She said nothing, not even asking his name. In the rearview mirror, Gideon glimpsed them, a memory flickering his son's face amid twisted metal. "The clinic's closed today," he said softly, "but I know a retired nurse. She'll help." Lena stayed silent, but her eyes softened with a trace of gratitude. The truck turned onto a dirt path, winding through rolling hills, the air heavy with the scent of sagebrush, and the faint clatter of cattle in the distance. The ranch emerged, white fences, a sturdy two-story house, weathered yet dignified, standing for generations. Lena stirred in the passenger seat, disoriented, panic rising. "Where's Sophie?" she gasped. "In the guest room safe," Gideon called from the kitchen. She rushed to find Sophie in a bed, a cool cloth on her forehead, her wrist bandaged. A glass of water and a note sat on the nightstand. "Rest, you're safe." Lena froze, stunned by the quiet kindness. No one had treated her this way, not with words, not with actions. She sank against the wall, letting herself breathe for the first time in months. In the kitchen, Gideon stood alone, unaccustomed to caring for others. From the window, he watched Lena tend to Sophie, crushing pills, wiping her brow. Not everyone could mother like that. He poured a glass of water, turned away, and felt something stir within him. He didn't even know her name. But perhaps fate was weaving something neither could foresee. Saving someone from the heat doesn't heal the scars within. In that quiet house, old memories began to surface, not all of them kind. Gideon's throat tightened, a dull pain settling in his chest. Night fell over the ranch, the silence broken only by crickets and the creak of wooden shutters. In a small room, Sophie remained feverish. Lena sat beside her, hands shaking as she replaced the cloth on her daughter's forehead. She'd lost count of her tears, but she knew if Sophie didn't recover, she wouldn't either. At the doorway, Gideon watched, the scene achingly familiar, a mother refusing to leave her child's side. Lena glanced around the sparse yet tidy house. On a shelf, a polished frame held a photo of a kind-faced woman and a young boy with a toy train, faded but cherished. Lena's voice was soft. "I saw the picture. Your wife and son, they're lovely. Would they mind us staying here tonight? I can leave if—" Gideon cut her off, his tone gentle but firm. "I lived with my wife Clara and our son Ben. They died in a car accident." The injuries were too severe. Memories flooded back. Screeching tires, shattered glass, Clara's hand slipping from his. "If you love me," she'd whispered, "don't close your heart." The hospital doors shut and they were gone days later. Lena said nothing, only squeezed Sophie's hand, her eyes softening with empathy. A knock interrupted. Dr. Nora Ellis, a retired nurse who had tended to Gideon's family, entered with a medical bag. She examined Sophie, nodding at Lena's care. "You've kept her stable. She'll pull through." Lena bowed her head, gratitude catching in her throat. In the hallway, Nora turned to Gideon. "I thought you called about a sick calf." "Not this." Gideon didn't reply. Nora's voice deepened. "I saw you break when Clara and Ben died. Now I see you living again." Gideon gripped his jacket, his voice rough. "I don't know what to do with this." "I didn't ask for it." Nora placed a hand on his shoulder. "She's not here to replace them. She's here to remind you you're still human. Don't let the past bury you again." Gideon glanced at Lena, her head resting near Sophie's, her hand never leaving her daughter's. The house, once silent, now hummed with life. Some wounds never fade, but a home with voices begins to heal them. Sunlight filtered through worn curtains, warming the old furniture. Lena hesitated to touch anything. A dusty frame showed a family of 3. A worn toy train sat on a chair, a relic of a lost boy.
In the kitchen, Gideon brewed coffee, its aroma cutting through the still air. He gestured to a kettle and bread. "Coffee's ready. Eggs are warming. Help yourself." Lena paused, then poured coffee into a chipped mug, sitting across from him. Keeping her distance, the air felt lighter, less guarded. By noon, Sarah Dutton, the sheriff's wife and a former nurse, arrived with a basket of muffins, fresh pears and homemade jam. Her warm eyes carried no judgment. She knocked softly before entering, as if sensing her welcome. Lena, startled, wiped her hands, but Sarah smiled. "Heard there's new folks here. Not here to snoop, just thought you'd like something sweet." She poured tea into mismatched cups and spoke plainly. "I've known Gideon since he was young. Knew Clara and Ben, too. After they passed, he didn't leave this ranch for a year." Lena listened, her eyes meeting Sarah's. "Since Clara and Ben, no woman stepped foot here. But you're different. Not here for pity or gain, that's rare." Lena's hands tightened in her lap. "I'm just trying to keep going," she whispered. Sarah's smile was warm. "Sometimes, those who don't see their own worth help others find theirs." They sipped tea in the quiet kitchen. Two women, one healing, one still mending, finding solace in shared silence. 3 weeks later, no formal plans were made, but shared meals, folded laundry, and towels drying on the porch turned. Lena and Sophie's stay into something lasting. Gideon opened the barn door, Lena beside him, her hands dusted with flour. Their steps were lighter under the golden evening sun, the scent of hay mingling with the creak of old wood. Gideon pointed to a small saddle. Ben loved riding our pony Star, he'd yell, "I'm gonna be a rancher like Dad." Lena smiled, then noticed a faded cowboy hat on a peg. Gideon's voice softened. "I haven't shared that in years. You're the first." In that silence, something shifted. Lena grew less guarded, her smile returning as she watched Sophie play. Her scars remained, but they were healing. Gideon, once a ghost of himself, began to speak of Clara and Ben, relearning how to share his grief. Lena listened without pity, only understanding, living with them. Gideon rediscovered family. The house, once quiet, now buzzed with laughter. The kitchen warm with stews and fresh bread, under the amber sunset. They stood together, not speaking of pain but opening their hearts. They didn't call it love. No one dared, but their presence softened old wounds. Lena stayed longer, teaching Sophie to read, mending clothes, cleaning forgotten corners of the house. Ellie Ray, a 16-year-old neighbor who tended the garden, visited often, helping Lena and playing with Sophie. Sarah stopped by weekly with bread and stories. One afternoon, as laughter filled the kitchen, Sophie asked, "Mr. Gideon, could you be my dad?" Lena froze, setting down her knife. "Sophie, don't say that. Mr. Gideon isn't." Sophie pressed on. "I want Mom to have someone kind, not like Dad Victor who made her cry." Lena's eyes welled up, realizing how much Sophie had seen. Gideon stood, took Sophie's hand, and led her to a drawing table. "Better light here. Draw a pony and I'll help later, okay?" He smiled at Sophie, who beamed. "Dad, I have a dad now." Lena started to correct her, but Gideon's gentle nod stopped her. "It's okay. I'm glad she sees me that way." Lena's heart softened. Later, Gideon asked quietly, "What happened that day on the roadside?" Lena took a breath, her story spilling out like a wound reopened. Victor, her cruel husband, controlled their finances, belittled her, and left her with nothing. The day of his accident, he'd called, drunk and raging, threatening her. His family blamed her, claiming her call caused the crash. But he'd been speeding, arguing with his lover via a hidden earpiece later removed from evidence. Evelyn spread lies, painting Lena as a scheming widow. Lena's voice trembled. That day, Evelyn demanded I sign away Sophie's custody or face consequences. They pulled us from the car. Sophie's wrist hit a stone. I grabbed her and ran, but we collapsed in the heat. No one helped until you. Gideon listened, his presence steady, like a mirror reflecting her unseen strength. In the warm kitchen, sunlight glinted off the table. Lena rested her head, tears falling, but her voice held firm. You saw me as a person, not a scandal. That saved me. Evelyn resurfaced in town, her cool demeanor and sunglasses hiding her unease. She spread whispers. Lena's at Gideon's, preying on his grief. Roland smirked. She was Victor's wife, now targeting a lonely man. Love, it's a trap. Gossip spread. Shopkeepers grew cold. Neighbors avoided Lena. At the market, Evelyn confronted her. This town's small, Lena. A few words, and they'll know who you are. Lena replied evenly, I know who I am. You're the one afraid of being forgotten. The crowd hushed, Evelyn's confidence wavering. Caleb Wren, a young reporter from Denver, heard the rumors. Investigating, he uncovered Victor and Roland's scheme to forge documents. Stealing 50 acres from Gideon years ago. Lena knew nothing of it, but Caleb's findings cleared her name. He met her in a quiet cafe, notebook in hand. I want your truth, not rumors. Lena shared her story, and Caleb promised, this isn't just for a story. I'll see the truth heard. At the sheriff's office, Lena presented Sophie's medical records and her own evidence. Photos, threatening texts, a former maid's testimony. Sheriff Daniel Dutton, skeptical at first, listened as Caleb provided forged contracts and proof of Roland's deceit. Sarah, his wife, urged him, justice isn't built on gossip. The next day, Daniel visited Gideon's ranch. not to question but to hear Lena's truth. Days later, Lena returned to the station with more evidence. Voicemails, witness accounts. "I won't let Sophie grow up thinking I gave up," she said. Daniel nodded, not with pity but respect. Lena wasn't asking for protection. She was reclaiming her story. That night, Gideon sat in the dim living room, holding a photo of Clara and Ben. "Can I help her and Sophie?" he whispered. "Would that hurt you?" A warmth stirred as if Clara whispered, "You're not alone anymore." Days later, a letter arrived from the county court. Evelyn Hargrove, Victor's sister, sought custody of Sophie, claiming Lena unfit. Lena clutched the letter, then sat beside Sophie asleep on the couch. "I won't back down," she vowed, her resolve unshaken. Gideon watched, his eyes reflecting quiet strength. In the Pinewood County Courthouse, Lena stood composed, facing Evelyn and Roland. The plaintiff's attorney repeated old lies. Lena was unstable, jobless, living with a man of questionable status. Lena presented her evidence, psychological reports, Sophie's medical history, journals of their daily life, letters from teachers. "If being a mother means standing by your child, I've done that," she said firmly. Caleb took the stand, revealing Victor's crash details, speeding, arguing with a lover. Not Lena. He exposed Roland and Evelyn's fraud, including forged land deals. Gideon spoke next, his voice steady. "I'm Gideon Holt, owner of a 3,000-acre ranch, debt-free worth $35 million, but I'm here for Sophie, who calls me Dad. Lena's courage outshines any wealth. Evelyn and Roland schemed against us both. Caleb presented federal documents proving Roland's money laundering and forgery. Sarah testified, Lena's strength defines motherhood. The judge ruled swiftly. Lena retained custody. Gideon was named Sophie's legal stepfather, and Roland faced federal charges. Evelyn paled as Roland was led away in cuffs. Lena collapsed, but Gideon caught her, his arm steady. "I did it," she whispered, laughing through tears. "I stood up for us." Gideon nodded, his hand on her shoulder. In the back, Sophie ran to them, and they embraced, a family forged in truth. The courtroom fell silent, not in shock, but in reverence. This was no mere trial, it was a mother's reclamation of her life. Rain fell as they left the courthouse, cleansing the past. Lena sat beside Gideon, Sophie asleep in her lap, her silence now one of peace. At the ranch, they cooked together, Gideon cleaning, Sophie chopping, Lena at the stove after dinner. Gideon offered her a glass of wine. "To being alive," he said. Lena looked at him unguarded. "I thought love was for others, grand houses, fine clothes. But it's someone sitting with you when you're broken." Gideon nodded. "I have wealth, but no one asked if I'd eaten until you came." Lena's eyes glistened. "I'm scared of love, it's where pain hides. But now I see it's about someone staying, flaws and all." Gideon extended his hand. A quiet promise. Lena took it, feeling safe not for wealth but for trust. They sat by the fire, no grand gestures, just two souls finding solace, Lena whispered. "You didn't save me, you showed me I'm worth saving." Weeks later, Gideon drove Lena and Sophie to a hillside cemetery where Clara and Ben's graves rested. He knelt, placing flowers. "I found someone brave, Clara, someone I can trust." Lena stood quietly, then spoke to the stones. "I won't replace you, but I'll be there for Gideon and Sophie." Gideon offered a simple gold ring. "This is for the future, if you're ready." Lena nodded, her eyes saying everything. Their wedding followed soon after, with Lena already carrying the quiet hope of new life within her. In the ranch garden, Ellie Ray arranging flowers, Sarah baking, Caleb snapping photos. Sophie, in a tiny suit, shouted, "My mom's marrying Dad Gideon. We're a real family." Reverend Thomas Lane blessed them. "You're not starting anew. You're continuing what your hearts already know." Evelyn later appeared, worn and humbled, apologizing for her cruelty. Lena nodded, not forgiving the past, but freeing herself. Roland was sentenced to 6 years for fraud. The town's tailor, Martha Cole, brought fabric as a silent apology. Lena smiled, no longer defined by others' lies. 2 years later, Sunrise Orchard glowed under the summer sun. Laughter filled the house, Sophie's footsteps the clatter of pans. Lena taught in a converted barn. guiding 15 children from struggling families. We learn letters, but also how to rise after falling, she said. Sophie, now 11, wrote stories. Her latest about the man who grew a family. Gideon, holding their newborn son Caleb, named for Hope, read it proudly. Ellie Ray, now at college, credited Lena's belief in her. Sarah, visiting, said, "You lifted others just as you were lifted." One morning, Gideon watched Lena hang a sign, Sunrise Community School. Holding Caleb, he said, "Your mom's the strongest woman I know, not fearless, but forgiving." Sophie ran up, clutching stories. "I'm entering a contest, Mom. Finn says heart matters most." They embraced under the sun, a family rebuilt. Time didn't erase scars, but they chose to live with them. Stronger for it, Lena, once a shadow, stood tall, not for revenge, but for resilience. Gideon, haunted by loss, found purpose. Sophie, once frail, grew in love. Those who caused pain faced justice. Those who sought forgiveness found it. Kindness, though delayed, brought rebirth. If you've ever felt unseen or fallen, this story is for you. Share your truth, it's the light another needs. 10 years later, Sophie, now 21, wrote to Lena from Sunrise Orchard, "Dear Mom, sunlight spills through the window, coffee brewing like when I was small. My husband's teaching our son to read, and you're still you. The woman who showed me family is where love lives. They called you a failure, a burden, but you held me. Cleaned that strange house and smiled despite it all. You didn't shout back, you chose kindness. At school, I was the girl from the roadside, but never ashamed, because you taught me character outshines lack. You sold your ring for my laptop, asking me to write our story as proof, not tragedy. At the reunion, I read my essay. My mother, cast out, built a kinder world. You saved us, Mom, not just me, but Gideon, Caleb, and the kids you teach. I'm not afraid anymore because you taught me self-respect. I want to be a mother like you, love." Sophie Holt Carver, 10 years after the trial. Sunrise Orchard had become more than a ranch. It was a sanctuary. Its name whispered across the Southwest as a place where broken lives found renewal. The red brick house stood proud, its walls adorned with children's drawings and family. Photos Lena and Gideon at their wedding. Sophie's first published story framed on the wall. Caleb's toddler handprints pressed into clay. The Sunrise Community School, now a certified institution, welcomed over 50 students. Its barn expanded with donations from families Lena had touched. Lena, now in her early 40s, led with quiet strength. Her classes blending literacy with lessons on resilience. Your story isn't what others say. It's what you choose to write. Sophie, at age 21, had graduated from college with a degree in creative writing. Her debut novel, Roots in the Dust, earning praise for its raw portrayal of her mother's journey. She returned to the ranch often, mentoring students at the school. Caleb, 9, was a budding artist, his sketches of the orchard's horses decorating the school's walls. Gideon, his hair silvered but his spirit renewed, managed the ranch's operations, training young farmers in sustainable practices. Together, they hosted an annual Sunrise Festival, where the town gathered to celebrate second chances with music, storytelling. In Lena's homemade cider, the Hargrove legacy had faded entirely. Evelyn, now elderly, sent a letter to Lena, confessing her regret and enclosing a donation for the school, anonymously. But Lena knew. Roland, released after his sentence, lived quietly in a distant city. His influence gone, the town, once divided by gossip, had embraced Lena's vision, with shopkeepers like Martha Cole volunteering at the school and Sheriff Daniel Dutton speaking at its fundraisers. "This," Daniel once said, "is what truth builds." One crisp autumn evening, the family gathered in the orchard under a canopy of stars. Lena lit a lantern, its glow warming the faces of Gideon, Sophie, Caleb, and a dozen students who'd stayed for a storytelling night. Sophie read from her novel, her voice steady. "My mother taught me that love isn't a gift. It's a choice, made every day even when the world turns away." Caleb presented Lena with a drawing of the family under a sunrise, whispering, "You're my hero, Mama." Gideon took Lena's hand, his eyes reflecting the lantern's light. "We didn't just survive," he said. "We built something eternal." As the students shared their own stories, tales of loss, hope, and healing, Lena looked across the orchard, its trees heavy with fruit, each one planted in soil once barren. She thought of the roadside where she'd nearly lost everything, of the stranger who stopped, of the life they'd forged from ashes. "This is the end of one story," she said softly, "but the beginning of countless others." The lantern flickered, and in its light, the family stood as one, their scars not erased but transformed into a tapestry of love and truth. And so, the story of Sunrise Orchard closed, not with a final word, but with a promise. Lena, Gideon, Sophie, and Caleb carried their past forward, not as a burden, but as proof that kindness rebuilds, resilience redeems, and truth, though slow, always rises. For anyone still listening, their tale whispers, "Your ending isn't written yet. Choose to rise and light the way for others."